Oh, we have the Schempp rock and its predecessor, the rock salt. This knife was developed from knives I used in cutting competition. I competed in a competition in the Oregon Knife Show for quite a few years in rope cutting. Mm-hmm. And I developed the blade somewhat from that task because we're trying to cut as many ropes as possible. And I found that trying to do a snap cut with a heavy cut was very detrimental to my wrist. So I went to the more kukri shaped blade to bring the edge square to the hanging ropes so it purchased rather than have to snap my wrists to them. It was all large muscles, and then if I did use a snap and add that at the last part, it just accentuated speed. So I ended up winning the competition 5 years in a row, so I think that the design has been proven in performance. The rock salt, exceptionally good steel with the H1 because it's so durable. The other advantage is that this nitrogen-bearing steel is additionally tough, additionally corrosion resistant, and practically unbreakable. The edge is easily restored because it has a tendency to roll an edge before it chips, which is significant to me in that I'm a blacksmith and I generally work with non-stainless high-carbon steel, and that's a characteristic I'm used to dealing with. It also has to do a lot with the longevity of the knife. If you can strop steel the edge back without having to remove metal to take out chips, there's an advantage in that the edge won't change that much and will be durable for a long period of time. This knife is extremely light, being that it's 3 millimeter material, but it's designed as a multitasking tool. It's heavy enough that in a standard grip it's slightly blade heavy, so quick snap cuts work fairly well with the additional blade weight. When you choke up into the index position, you have a neutral blade weight, so you have excellent control. If you have to do fine work, it's a little tail heavy, so you have something balancing off the tip cuts on light work. And the evolution to the VG10 works in a couple different aspects in that this is a less expensive material, but not that far different than this nitrogen steel. VG10 was developed as a grafting knife steel that was stainless. Normally it was, Hitachi blue or white steel, and it could get a little sharper, but it would corrode. And that caused problems because you don't want tissue disruption in any graft when you're doing tree fruit grafting, because it's a good place for bacteria infection for the tree. So it works very well and has a very fine grain structure, and it also has the ability to roll before it chips. So often you can maintain this edge with stropping or steeling without having to remove a bunch of material and change the shape of the blade. But VG10 is one of my favorite steels just from its ability to maintain it with the least amount of effort and at a very high sharpness. Most of the effect of the edge grind has to do with the actual thickness before it is sharpened. And if you actually see that, we have a shoulder, but it's back 3/4 of an inch, most of the effectiveness of the cutting of the knife is determined in the first 100,000ths back from the edge. And with Spyderco, they're so good with their edge geometry, it would really be pretty hard for somebody in a blind test to tell the difference between the two. But this is hollow ground because both sides are ground at the same time. Mm-hmm. Whereas VG10 being a martensitic steel, they grind one side, put it in a fixture, and grind the other side. So that kind of has dictated that this has to be a hollow grind, and this has the option of being a full flat, which is nice if you want to do a low angle approach. The flat grind has some superiority, but in that it's so wide, so thin, it's really hard to tell the difference. And I personally have great difficulty doing it. But the cutting competitions have been great as far as makers understanding edge geometry. And it's led, I think, overall to better ground knives throughout the industry. So it is definitely a benefit. And Spyderco, with their extensive testing, understands this. You know, the Cutlery doesn't lie, and it's not human influence. So it's a very good way of doing business and making knives.